According to forbidden texts, 8 souls entered Noah's Ark, but 9 emerged at the end of the flood. The hidden tradition speaks of a clandestine passenger who was never invited, but was absolutely necessary. Today you will discover who or what traveled in secret for 40 days and 40 nights on Noah's Ark. What you have been told about the universal flood is incomplete, and the truth will change your perspective. The Bible mentions Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their 3 daughters-in-law, a total of 8 people, no more. However, Gnostic and Apocryphal manuscripts insistently speak of an additional presence in the Ark. Some texts call her the uninvited shadow, others the dark passenger of the Ark of Salvation. Could it be true that something evil survived the divine judgment, hidden among the saved animals? Ancient Jewish traditions suggest that this entity was one of the fallen angels in disguise. Other apocryphal texts go further and claim that it was a Nephilim, a giant son of angels. Let us remember that the Nephilim existed before the flood, born from the union between fallen angels and women. These hybrid beings, half celestial and half human, ruled the earth with violence and corruption. The purpose of the flood was precisely to eliminate the genetic corruption introduced by the fallen angels. So, how could a Nephilim have survived if the flood was designed to destroy them all? The answer lies in the Dead Sea Scrolls and in extremely ancient Jewish oral traditions. According to these sources, a cunning Nephilim understood Noah's warnings months before the final flood. This being would have used its partially angelic nature to transform or hide among animals. Some versions say that it took the form of a serpent, the same symbol that had tempted Eve in Eden. Other traditions claim that it disguised itself as a clean animal to ensure its entry into the sacred ark. The Gnostic text, The Secret Apocalypse of John, mentions that Noah brought more than he knew to the ark. This cryptic phrase has intrigued theologians for centuries. What does it mean, beyond what I knew exactly? In Gnostic cosmology, the ark represented a microcosm of the entire universe after purification. For this microcosm to be functional, it needed to contain both light and darkness in balance. However, there is an even more disturbing interpretation that directly connects with the purpose of the flood. Some texts suggest that the 9th passenger was not a Nephilim, but something much older and more powerful. Kabbalistic traditions speak of Samael, the angel of death, traveling hidden in Noah's Ark. Other versions identify the stowaway as Azazel, the fallen angel who taught weapons to humanity. But the most extreme version claims that it was the same adversary, the devil, in pure animal form. The theological question that arises is devastating. Why would God allow evil to survive judgment? The answer lies in the concept of free will, the most sacred gift that God granted to humanity. Without the existence of evil as a real option, free will becomes a meaningless illusion. If only good exists, choosing good has no moral merit. There is no virtue in the absence of temptation. So, the dark passenger was not a mistake or a flaw in the divine plan, but an essential part of it. The flood eliminated the physical corruption of the Nephilim, but the principle of evil had to remain spiritually active. Noah built the ark following precise divine instructions, 300 cubits long, 50 wide, and 30 high. 3 floors contained compartments for each animal species, provisions for over a year, and family rooms. but the apocryphal texts mentioned that Noah discovered compartments that he had not built after the flood. Empty spaces between the gopher woods, as if something had been there and then mysteriously vanished. The Book of Jubilees speaks of Noah finding strange marks on the third floor of the ark, tracks that did not belong to any known animal, as if a large being had walked there. Ancient Ethiopian traditions say that Noah heard voices during the nights of the flood, voices that were not human. His children asked him about those sounds, but Noah told them it was just the wind hitting the wood. However, the patriarch knew the truth. There was something more in the ark, something that was watching and waiting patiently. The Armenian text History of the Patriarchs describes a crucial moment during the 40th day of the flood. Noah woke up and saw a dark figure at the end of the third-floor hallway, motionless, staring at him intently. When he lit a lamp, the figure disappeared like smoke, leaving only a smell of sulfur in the air. The next morning, Noah found some small animals dead for no apparent reason, as if they had been touched by something. The texts suggest that the dark passenger occasionally fed on the life energy of lesser creatures. But he never touched the humans or the animals necessary to repopulate the earth after the flood. The Apocalypse of Abraham mentions that the fallen angels desperately tried to ascend to the ark before the flood. They were violently rejected by the guardian angels, who protected the entrance under direct orders from the Most High. However, one of them, the cleverest, had already been inside for weeks before the door closed. This fallen angel had temporarily renounced his celestial form to inhabit a pure animal body. The strategy was brilliant. God had commanded to save the animals, and technically, now he was an animal. When the waters began to recede and the ark settled on Mount Ararat, something changed inside. The animals that had been calm for months suddenly showed signs of agitation and extreme fear. Noah attributed this to them feeling solid ground again, but the reality was more sinister, according to the texts. The dark passenger was regaining its true form, and the animals could sense its malevolent essence emerging. The day Noah opened the door of the ark and first released the raven, the texts describe something extraordinary. The raven, instead of searching for dry land as expected, flew in circles over the ark for hours, as if it were watching to ensure that something inside didn't escape, or perhaps waiting for something specific to come out first. Rabbinic traditions explain that the raven was cursed by Noah for not fulfilling its exploration mission correctly. But alternative versions say that the raven perfectly fulfilled its true mission of guarding the exit of the contained evil. When the dove finally returned with the olive branch, Noah knew they could safely disembark for good. That day, while the families and animals were leaving in an orderly manner, something else slipped out unnoticed by anyone. The Gnostic texts describe a shapeless shadow that slid among the animals towards the forests of Ararat. This shadow carried with it the seed of forbidden knowledge that the fallen angels had shared before the flood. Knowledge of metallurgy, astrology, witchcraft, and all the secrets that had corrupted pre-Diluvian humanity. The flood had destroyed the bodies of the Nephilim, but their intellectual legacy survived with the dark passenger. This would explain why, generations after Noah, references to giants reappear in the Bible. The Nephilim that Moses and the Israelites encounter in Canaan, how could they have existed after the universal flood? Traditional theology suggests a second incursion of fallen angels after the flood, repeating the original transgression. However, the apocryphal texts suggest that there was never a second incursion, but rather continuity through the passenger. The dark passenger would have preserved the genetic knowledge or the ability to manifest these hybrid beings again. Cultures around the world have parallel myths about evil entities surviving global cataclysmic floods. In Mesopotamian mythology, Utnapishtim carries the spirit of Tiamat, the goddess of primordial chaos, in his ark. Norse legends speak of Loki hiding during Ragnarok to emerge in the new and renewed world. Hindu mythology tells how Manu saves the animals, but also the cosmic serpent Vasuki without knowing it. These parallels are not coincidences, but cultural memory of an archetypal truth. Evil always finds a way to survive. Folklore scholars refer to these entities as tricksters, the deceivers who transcend the purifications of the world. They represent the principle of necessary chaos that balances order, the darkness that defines light by contrast. In Jungian psychological terms, the dark passenger is the collective shadow of humanity that cannot be eliminated. Jung asserted that integrating the shadow, not destroying it, is the path to individuation and spiritual wholeness. From this perspective, God allowed evil to survive because destroying it would mean destroying the possibility of moral growth. The Book of Enoch, a fundamental apocryphal text, details the rebellion of 200 fallen angels on Mount Hermon. These angels, known as the Watchers, descended and took human wives, giving birth to the tall Nephilim. Azazel, leader among them, taught men to make swords, knives, shields, and armor for war. Other fallen angels taught cosmetics, spells, astrology, and the art of observing the stars to predict the future. This contamination of divine knowledge in the hands of unprepared humans resulted in violence and massive planetary corruption. Genesis 6:5 says that God saw that every intention of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil. The flood was the divine response, but the Book of Enoch adds a detail that the canonical Bible omits. Before the flood, God sent archangels to chain the fallen angels in places of darkness until the final judgment. So, if the fallen angels were chained, how could one have entered Noah's Ark without being detected? The answer lies in the concept of relative time in spiritual dimensions, according to ancient esoteric theology. The chaining occurred on a spiritual plane, but on the physical plane, there was a temporal window before its effect. A clever fallen angel could anchor itself to the physical world by fully transforming into an animal during that time. By renouncing his angelic nature and taking on a material form, he would escape the spiritual chaining destined for him. This is the interpretation that Kabbalistic commentators give to the enigma of the ninth passenger of Noah's Ark. The Jewish Haggadah text mentions that Noah took the giant Og with him, who survived by clinging to the outside. But this version differs. The passenger was not outside braving the waves. He was inside completely hidden and camouflaged. The theological difference is vital. Og relied on physical strength, while the dark passenger used cunning and supernatural change. For the 150 days that the waters covered the earth, only the ark floated in an ocean of death. Inside that ark, 8 righteous humans, pairs of pure and impure animals, and something that should not have been there. The texts describe that Noah occasionally felt an inexplicable presence, especially during the moonless nights of the flood. A feeling of being watched from the shadows, of eyes that did not belong to any known animal staring at you intently. His sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth also reported recurring nightmares during the journey on the floating ark. Dreams where a faceless figure whispered secrets about the future, about empires that would fall, and blood. Noah told them, It was just the stress of confinement and the magnitude of the trial they were witnessing outside. But in his private prayers, the patriarch asked God about the presence he felt insistently. According to the Testament of Noah, a fragmentary text, God replied to him, "What must remain will remain for balance." This cryptic response tormented Noah for years, even after he planted his vineyard in the renewed land. The incident where Noah got drunk and ended up naked could have a deeper meaning according to these alternative interpretations. Some exegetes suggest that Noah drank to forget what he had experienced in the ark, truths that were too heavy. Truths about the nature of good and evil, about how God allows both to exist for impossible reasons. When the dark passenger finally left the ark on Mount Ararat, he took with him more than ancient forbidden knowledge. He carried the certainty that renewed humanity would fall again, because falling is inherent to free will. Generations later, when Abraham, Moses, and the prophets walked the earth, the legacy of the traveler remained active. Every choice between good and evil that humanity faces is evidence that the cosmic balance continues. The Nephilim mentioned in Numbers 13:33, when the spies explore Canaan, are the physical echo of that survival. We saw there giants, the sons of Anak, the race of the Nephilim, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, they reported. How could Nephilim exist after the flood specifically destroyed all of them without exception? Apocryphal texts offer a darker and more disturbing answer than traditional genealogical explanations. The passenger of the ark not only survived, but also ensured that the seed of the fallen angels persisted. Not necessarily through direct reproduction, but through the transmission of knowledge of its original creation. This knowledge would allow for hybridization to manifest again on Earth under certain conditions and rituals. In this way, evil is not just an abstract spiritual force, but something that can take on a concrete physical form. The implications are profound. The battle between light and darkness did not end with the flood. It merely restarted. Noah thought he was beginning a new and purified world, but the past had sown seeds in that future. The final question raised by these texts is whether God really did not know about the ninth passenger on the ark. Or did he know perfectly well and allow it because a world without the possibility of evil would have no true spiritual meaning? Jewish and Christian mystics have debated this for millennia. Theodicy, the justification of the existence of evil. If God is omnipotent and benevolent, why does evil exist, and why does it survive every attempt at purification? The response of the dark passenger of the ark suggests that evil is a necessary component of the design, not a flaw. Without real temptation, without authentic danger, virtue becomes automatic and therefore lacks genuine moral value. The hero is only heroic when facing true villains. Light only shines because there is darkness to contrast. This is the central paradox of existence. We need that which we must resist the most in order to truly be ourselves. The Ark of Noah, then, was not just a vehicle for physical salvation from the destruction of the flood. It was a microcosm of the moral universe where purity and corruption, light and shadow coexist forcefully. 8 just souls and one dark passenger sailing together towards a future where the battle between them would continue eternally. Gnostic texts refer to this as the eternal dance of opposites, the perpetual movement that generates reality. Hermetic traditions refer to it as solve et coagula, the endless cycle of dissolving and coagulating, destruction and creation. In each of us exists that same duality. We are descendants of Noah, but also heirs of the dark passenger. We carry the ability to choose, and in that choice, our true selves are defined at our deepest being. The story of the ninth passenger reminds us that evil is not external. It is not something that came solely from the flood. Travel with us, within us, waiting for every opportunity to manifest when we let our guard down and give in. But it also reminds us that we have the power to keep it contained, just as Noah did for 40 days. The ark was a confined space where good and evil coexisted without destroying each other in a precarious balance. Our life is that ark, and each day is another day of the flood that we must navigate with wisdom. The Nephilim represent the extreme manifestations of evil, but the dark passenger is something more subtle and even more dangerous. It is the constant whisper that justifies small corruptions, small betrayals, small steps toward the growing darkness of the soul. Noah listened to those voices for 150 days and never opened the door too soon to give in to them. When he finally opened the door, he did so under divine instruction, not under the pressure of the persistent dark presence. This is the final lesson. Evil can travel with us, but it cannot force us to act completely. Only we open the door that allows him to step out of the shadows and manifest in concrete and real actions. If this mystery of the dark passenger has intrigued you, subscribe to uncover more hidden secrets of ancient forbidden texts.